Good evening. It is Thursday, May 8th, and we are so happy to welcome Linda, say your name. I don't want to mispronounce it.
My
Linda
last
Cohen.
Lynda
That
Cohen Loigman. Loigman is my
Loigman.
last
Okay.
name. Yeah.
Yeah, I would
Yeah.
have never gotten that.
Yeah.
And she is the author of The Love Elixir of Augusta Stern. She is also the author of wait, now I'm going to go to her bio.
Family House.
Yes, and we read that. Thank you. We
Love
we
that
love
book.
Family House, and we're going to have to go back and revisit Wartime Sisters because that also. We love your books, Linda. So here's a little bit about her. She graduated from Harvard College and Columbia Law School. Ooh. Her debut novel was The Two-Family House. If you haven't read it, you must. It was a USA Today bestseller and nominee for the Goodreads 2016 Choice Awards. I can't believe it was almost 10 years ago.
I know,
Her,
right?
yeah,
You
her
would know
second
it.
novel, The Wartime Sisters, was selected as a Woman's World Book Club pick and a Best Book of 2019 by Real Simple magazine. Her most her other book, The Matchmaker's Gift, which I really really loved as well, was named Best New Book by People magazine and a Best Book of Fall. And now we have The Love Elixir of Augusta Stern, and I also really enjoyed this book. And I'm going to now put Linda there. And Linda, take it away.
Sure. Thanks for having me, everybody. I'm happy to spend this. Well, it's rainy here. I don't know what it's like by you, but I'm an hour north of New York City and it is raining here. So it is lovely to spend a rainy evening with
Well,
you
we're
guys.
in Chicago and the sun has come out.
Okay,
It
good.
hasn't come out very much, but it's
Okay.
out this evening.
Okay, good. I'm glad. My dog Winston is in my little office with me, so if you hear him bark or anything weird, that's because it's the dog. So just to warn you. Um, I was gone a lot of the day, so I'm letting him in here today, and hopefully he'll be on his best behavior. So if you guys can be on good behavior, I think he probably can handle it too, though maybe not. So what I like to do is I'm going to tell you just sort of about the inspiration for this book, how it came to be. I will tell you about my research and a couple sort of family things. And I'm an open book, so you can ask me anything you like. You can, I can see a couple of you like up at top, but not really like just the bottom halves of your faces. So
If
if you,
you want to, Linda, you can go to view gallery and then you can see everyone. And it's still going to record
let's
the
see.
big picture of you.
Hmm.
Yeah. I'm
Oh,
going
wait.
on my fifth year of Zooming, so
Okay. Where is the view gallery part?
so
Up at the top right.
top right view, and then you go under it and gallery, and then you can see everybody.
Oh, there it is. Okay, it was hidden by my thing. Okay, perfect. Okay, now I can see everyone. Great. Okay, so this book, it makes me laugh. Actually, the tagline for this book, which if you like look at, which is the little marketing spiel. So in the beginning, right there, it says it's never too late for new beginnings. And when the marketing people sent me their all their stuff and they said that's going to be the tagline, it made me kind of laugh because that is the story of my writing career. Because I wrote the Two Family House. Yes, it was 9 years ago now, but this is my second career. This is my new beginning, even though it's not the beginning anymore. Now it's somewhere in the middle. But I was a lawyer for 10 years and I never liked being a lawyer. I was a trust and estates lawyer, which meant that I talked to, families. I did estate planning and estate administration. I really liked all the drama. I liked when the families fought with each other. People would have a lot of, you know, gossip and bad things to say. I liked all that. I just really did not like researching the tax laws in any way at all. So I should have known then that I was really never meant to be a lawyer. But um, I came up with the idea for the two family house when my daughter was 6 months old. And it was inspired sort of by my mom's childhood home, but the idea for the story really came because I read this New York Times magazine article about women who had a lot of boys and wanted to have a girl, and what they were willing to go through to try to get a boy, to try to get a girl after they had like 2 boys, 3 boys, whatever it was. And my mom grew up in Brooklyn in a 2-family house. She was one of 3 sisters, and her mother's brother. Oh, there you go. Look at that. Fancy. Her uncle lived downstairs, and he also had 3 daughters. So there were 6 girls in this house, and they were raised like sisters. And my grandmother would always say how much she wanted a boy to me. She would always tell me that she wanted a boy. And so when I read that article, I thought about my grandmother, who was still very much alive at that time. And I had just had a little girl, and I thought about all of those things and what would my grandmother have done if there were scientific advances to help her have a boy. And I reimagined my mother's childhood home. And the way that my writing career came about was, I thought about that book. I came up with the idea for it when my daughter was not even a year. I thought about it for 10 years. I never wrote a word down. I just would come up with the whole story in my head. I thought about it. I would tell it to people on walks. I would tell it to my husband before we went to sleep. And then my mom passed away young. She was 63, and I
Wow.
was just about to turn 40. And I just knew that if I didn't do something, I wouldn't have a new beginning. I wouldn't ever write that story. And so I took a class at Sarah Lawrence College, which is about 45 minutes from me, kind of like an adult education class. And I wrote my book over the course of 5 years. My kids were little at the time, so I didn't have as much time as I do now. And the 6-month-old baby that my daughter was is now, she just got married in January, so she's 26 years old now.
Oh, wow.
Mazel
My
tov.
son,
Mazel
yeah,
tov
thank
is
you.
right.
And my
Yeah.
son is 22. And I have a lot of time now, but I didn't then. But I got lucky. I wrote that book, I got an agent, and I published it. And that was the beginning of my writing career. All my books are inspired by my family,
Hmm.
mostly by my mother's side of the family. And the there are no characters that are based on specific people, but there are a lot of characters who have different characteristics of all the people that I know. And there's a lot of my grandmother in many of these characters. There's a lot of my mother. There's a lot of my aunts. There's a lot of the women that I know and have loved in my life in a lot of these characters. The Love Elixir of Augusta Stern is a little bit different because for the very first time, I drew inspiration from my husband's family and also from my father. And that was a new one. All of these books, I have 4 books now. And one of the things that's so special to me about having these books is that each one is the story that it is. And that's great. And that's wonderful. And I've met people through them and talked and gone on tour. And that's great. And that's wonderful. But also, as a little added bonus, each book is sort of a snapshot of my life, of where I was in my life when I was writing it. And so, for instance, Matchmaker's Gift was my COVID book. My daughter had just, been sent home from college. My son was a senior in high school, missing his whole year. All these things, each book I can look back and I know where I was and I know what I was doing, and so that feels really special to me to be able to mark my life that way. So my husband's great grandmother I learned about very early on when we began dating. The first time I went to New Jersey to see his childhood home, I saw a pillow on my mother-in-law's chair that was a needlepoint pillow of a picture of a woman with red hair wearing a lab coat, and it said Goldie on it. And I heard about Goldie Litvin. She was a pharmacist. She graduated from Fordham's Pharmacy College in 1921. And she was married to a pharmacist. He had a store in the Bronx. He passed away very young, unexpectedly, I think from a heart attack, though I'm not exactly sure. And she decided that to keep the store and to provide for her 2-year-old daughter, she was going to go to pharmacy school. So that's what she did. And by all accounts, she was a very brilliant woman. This book is not about her at all. I stole her name. I stole both of her names because her nickname was Goldie. I thought that her given name was Goldie, until I researched the Fordham Pharmacy College records, which I felt I really had to do before I went on tour and started talking to people, because you know how families are. You could say someone did something and maybe they didn't do it. So I really wanted to confirm that she did in fact graduate from pharmacy school, and she did. But when I went through those records, I learned that her given name was actually Augusta, and everyone in the family seemed to have forgotten that fact, which I thought was pretty funny. And so I stole both of her names. And there's really only one other fact that I stole from her, because again, you know, she was gone long before I met my husband, and I never had the privilege of knowing her. But apparently, she lied about her age quite often. And my father-in-law put white out on her pharmacy license and typed over it and photocopied it. And that was how she worked into her 80s and kept working. So that was a sort of really funny little tidbit that I liked. And I used that in the story, of course, right in the very beginning of the book. But when I learned about her, I was not yet a writer. And I kind of, as I became a writer and as I wrote more and more, you know, I keep kind of what I like to say is like a basket of ideas in my head all the time. I don't tend to write them down, though sometimes I do. Sometimes I'll make a note on my phone when I have a little idea for something in a book. And it could be an idea for a book, it could be an idea for a title, a character, a setting, a sentence, something. You know, I just kind of keep these ideas. So I had that setting, really. That was really a setting, the pharmacy setting, right? That was in my head as a possible place to start with the book. But I didn't have a story, and I didn't have a plot, and I didn't have characters, and I didn't have anything else. So I wasn't doing anything with it. I had it in my head for years and years. And then I wrote The Matchmaker's Gift. And when I wrote The Matchmaker's Gift, I pivoted a little bit from just my straight historical books, which my first two books were, to also a historical novel, but adding a little bit of magical realism to the book. And I loved doing that. It was something that I had always wanted to do. I loved writing that in. And I loved the response that I got from readers who were so excited about that book, because it was very uplifting and it was very joyful, and it made them really happy. And, you know, at a time when, you know, COVID was, it came out after COVID, but still, it was something that people were feeling good about. And many people would write to me and tell me so, or tell me when I met them or whatever it was. And I'd kind of decided that I wanted to write that kind of book again. I wasn't going to go back to my same straight historical. I had been working on one and I put it aside. And I went back to this pharmacy setting, because that, of course, is a setting that's so ripe for any kind of magic. You have bottles of potions and chemicals, and you can make pills, and you could do all kinds of things. So I was thinking about that a lot more, and it was kind of at the top of my basket of ideas. And then my dad got sick. My dad lived, as I told you earlier, my mom died when she was 63. So my dad, they had already moved to Florida. They lived in Boynton Beach, and my dad started dating a year after she died, and he had 15 years of dating, and he dated a lot of women. Many women. When I do,
Sorry.
nope, you can laugh. When I speak in Florida, sometimes I speak to some really big crowds. I've had like 400 women in a room at a luncheon, and I will say, perhaps my father dated one of you, and everyone laughs, but like I'm not really joking, because it's a possibility. So, so my dad took a fall, and he was in the hospital. And you know the story. He was in the hospital, then he was in rehab. Then when he went to leave rehab, he needed an aide. And I was down in Florida a lot, working all this stuff out. He had been dating a woman for 5 years before he got sick. And when he got out of rehab, she broke up with him immediately, which I really understood. It sounds harsh, but she had, you know, she had had a sick husband, and she was a widow, and she just didn't really want to go through that again. And I really did understand it. Unfortunately, my father was devastated, and she didn't want to like be friends. She just cut it off, ripped off the band-aid. And he was really devastated. And his social life had really revolved around her and her community. So he didn't have anybody really left in his community. And he was really lonely. And by the end of the summer, between really not being able to take care of himself at all, and being so lonely, we decided that it would be best to look at assisted living facilities, and that was what we were doing. He was really nervous about it, very apprehensive, thinking about the nursing homes like that his grandmother and grandfather had gone into. But when we started visiting them, he really got pretty excited because he was a very, very social man. He liked to be with people all the time. He wanted, even at that age, at the time he was 84, he wanted to find a new girlfriend. He wanted to find companionship. He was looking for love quite literally up until the day he died, because he died sort of suddenly after 2 years there. And the the second to last conversation I had with him was about an ex-girlfriend, and it was a pretty funny conversation. So he was still looking. So what happened was, the very first day that I moved him in, I like to say it's like taking your kids to college and dropping them off. You worry that they won't have friends. You worry, who are they going to eat with that first meal? Who are they? What's going to happen? So I hung out the whole day. And when it was time for lunch, which was his first meal there, he was sitting outside the dining room, which was this area in the lobby where everybody liked to congregate. And he was the new guy, and there were a lot of women looking at him and talking to him. And he was, whatever, everybody was talking. And I had this moment of panic. And my panic was, what if one of those women that he had a bad breakup with is actually a resident here as well? We just don't know it yet. Because how could we know? No one gives you a list of residents, and no one checked them for like ex-girlfriend, which sort of, as I was sitting there, I was thinking, I really should have done that. Like, that might have been a good idea. But honestly, I didn't even know all of their last names. So how would I even do it? Who knows? Like, I mean, it wasn't really going to work out. But I had that moment. And that, quite honestly, was the very beginning of this book, because, Augusta lives in an active retirement community, but the idea of someone, an older person, running into someone from their past who they really don't want to see, just made me laugh. And at that time, let me tell you, I really needed a laugh. It was a very tough summer, and it was a tough fall, and my son, was starting college, and with the COVID, like the masks, and it was just like it was a kind of a bleak time. And every time I thought about that scenario, I just laughed. And I just, there's something about it just really tickled me. And there were other things too that were much more heartfelt, um, that that kind of I felt as I was going through that experience with my dad. I felt like the people that he would meet and talk to were so kind and so interesting. They were a really interesting, really smart group of people. And it occurred to me just kind of how we think about older people in our society, and how we don't really see them the same way that we see younger people, and how we
Yep.
don't really consider that they have the same depth and range of emotion, and that they want the same exact things that anybody wants, and they want love, and they want companionship, and they get lonely, and all these same things. And there was a man who I met the first day, who I call the 100-year-old man, because the day that I met him, he had just, it was the day after his 100th birthday. So I met him when he was 100 years old in one day. And he was sharp as a tack, in much better physical shape than my father. They would make everybody have a walker, and the 100-year-old man would just carry his in the air. Like, one of those aluminum walkers, he'd walk around like holding it up, and they would constantly be yelling at him to put it down, but he didn't really want any part of that. And he showed me the pictures in his wallet. He kind of did this with everyone that he met. He would show you 3 pictures. One of him when he was a baby, one of him in his army uniform during World War II, and one of him on his wedding day with his wife. And when I met him, his wife had been gone for 6 months, and she didn't reach 100, but she was close. And they had been married, he told me, for over 70 years. And he said it was not enough. It was not enough time. And if that isn't like proof of absolute romance, and I mean, right, this man who's 100 had that depth of emotion. He wasn't giving up, he wasn't accepting it, he was railing against it, and he loved her every bit as much as, you know, some 25-year-old. He felt everything that any 25-year-old in some rom-com movie that you watch feels. He felt it all. And it just occurred to me that I wanted to write a book about an older person and about a scenario where there was some romance, but also a lot of other things. And then I started researching. You know, those were the beginnings, but I didn't know exactly where I was going to go. The first thing that I have to do when I'm writing a book is I have to pick the time period. And that, you know, the two family house, I knew the time period was the time period that my mother was a child. You know, they were born in the blizzard of 47, and I knew that that was what it was always going to be. Um, the Matchmaker's Gift, I had to really pick a time period. This book, I really had to pick a time period. I picked the early 1920s, not only because that was when my husband's grandmother graduated from pharmacy college and started her practice. That was a big reason for me to start there and start investigating that time period. But I very easily could have picked the 1950s, the, you know, the 40s, whatever it was. I stuck with the 20s because of prohibition, honestly. When I learned what prohibition meant for pharmacies during that time.
I had no idea. That was
Yeah.
fascinating.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I knew that it was
definitely.
going, yeah, I knew that it was going to be really important to the story. I could have this gangster storyline. The idea that pharmacies were one of the few places where that could sell alcohol legally because you could get this prescription, you know, for a pint of whiskey every 10 days for medicinal purposes. Um, that was fascinating. And the idea that gangsters were, you know, sort of creating fake pharmacies on paper and harassing real pharmacists and trying to get in on the action was something that was just a really interesting, like you said, it's fascinating. I had never heard, I didn't know it. I found an article about how to become a bootlegger, like how to do it, like how to set up your fake pharmacy. Um, it was just, it really was a plus for that time period. And then there was the matter of Augusta's mother. I knew all along that Augusta's mother would die young, that Augusta would be motherless, you know, for a good part of her life. Because only if her mother is gone does that sort of pave the way for Aunt Esther to come to help take care of the family. So I knew that was going to be a plot point early on. And I knew that I wanted Solomon Stern, Augusta's father, to really suffer because that's what authors do. We make our characters suffer. We put them in terrible positions and then we make them even more terrible. And I knew that for a pharmacist to have every medicine at your disposal except the one thing that might save your wife would be so dramatic, so poignant. It would tug at your heartstrings as a reader. It would make you pay attention. It would make you think. And so I was researching, you know, thinking, what could she die of? What, you know, what would it be? And of course, in my research of that time period, I found articles about diabetes and insulin first becoming available. And I didn't know that that happened then. It was like 1923, I think.
Right. I didn't know that was also very fascinating.
Yeah, I knew that it happened at some point. I knew that there wasn't always insulin, and I knew that diabetes used to be a death sentence, but I didn't know
Mm.
when. And when I found out what that timing was, then I was absolutely stuck and sold on that time period. And then of course my later 1980s time period follows from the earlier one. A lot of people will sometimes say like, why didn't you make it in the present day? Why'd you choose the 80s? And I'm like, no one can live forever. You can't have like 100 and, you know, 30, 40-year-old protagonist. It doesn't work. So the 80s was fun because, you know, I graduated from high school in 1986. I know the 80s. Um, I had never been to Florida in the 80s, but I've been to Florida now, and my husband spent a lot of time in Florida in the 80s, and his parents had a place there then. And I did you know, my Florida research was definitely much easier, lighter research than my
Yeah.
1920s research. But there's a restaurant in the book, you know, where this big scene happens, and I had been to that restaurant a couple times. It's no longer around, but it was the kind of restaurant that you went for a special occasion. And many people who have read the book have talked to me about that restaurant, which is really fun. I started by reading memoirs of pharmacists and speaking to pharmacists, interviewing them. I'm really lucky in my town. I have an independent pharmacy, and my pharmacist's father still practices. And well, when I was researching the book, he was 85, so he's older now, um, 88 probably now. And he was really helpful. Even though he wasn't around in the 20s, he was still helpful, to give me ideas about what jobs Augusta might have been able to do when she was young. But reading the memoirs helped me really figure out what it was like, what a community pharmacist did and what their role was. They were the first person you went to. You didn't go to the doctor first. You went to the pharmacist. You had a rash, you went to the pharmacist. You had a stomach ache, you went to the pharmacist. Everything. And they would compound things specifically for you. And give you advice and bring you into their back room and give you a consultation. And that's how it worked. And they were really important, to their communities back then. So reading those early memoirs gave me a lot of anecdotes, a lot of things that I could use in the story. For instance, the idea of the night bell, of living above the store, which so many people did, of having this night bell so that, if someone had an emergency, they could ring the bell and you'd trundle down the stairs and help them out. And many of them in their stories, a lot of the pharmacists would complain about the people that rang the night bell for something that was not an emergency. Like they would ring the night bell and want aspirin or want like a stamp, like a penny, a 2-cent stamp or whatever. And the pharmacist would really not like that. And then there were anecdotes about people coming in. Some people asked for love potions or things, to put them in the mood. People asked for that. People asked for things if there were pregnancies, unwanted pregnancies. People were asking for all kinds of things from pharmacists, and they had to keep people's secrets. They really did. One of the things that I found really fascinating that made its way into the book was that several of them spoke about people asking for arsenic because at that time period, arsenic was really used for your complexion. But of course, we all know it's also a poison. And the importance of knowing your customers, because if some customer, Mr. Jones, comes in and asks for arsenic for his wife's complexion, and yet you know that Mrs. Jones has skin as white as snow, and Mr. Jones has been stepping out around town with some woman who is not his wife, then you begin to think he wants to maybe do her some harm. And the pharmacist had to have really, his finger on the pulse of the community and know the customers, because some people might try to hurt themselves or they might try to hurt other people, and they had to be really, really aware. I got a lot of magazines, old magazines, from eBay. I'll show you one. I have a bunch of them, but this one, I love the cover. It looks like a Norman Rockwell cover, but it's not. But this is an American Druggist magazine from, I forget, this one's from like 31 or something. But magazines like this, first of all, I love the idea that it's this humorous interpretation, right? There's like a wizard and a joker mixing up stuff. And so that gave me sort of the confidence to try to make part of this book really amusing, right? But there were so many, like, there were all the ads in here, for different products. And so when I would see the ads, Alka-Seltzer, then I would know what was available on the shelves and I could build the world of the pharmacy. And there were ads. This is like another one. We got Western Druggist magazine, all different kinds. With this one, so many ads for equipment that pharmacists needed. So then I would know what Solomon Stern would be using to make his pills, to make whatever it was, that he was selling in the store. And the whole idea of the soda fountain, learning about the slang for that the soda fountain, the soda jerks would use, and what they were selling. Like there were so many ads in these things for toasters to make sandwiches for the soda fountains. Like sandwiches were a very big thing, and it was funny. As were syrups. Syrups were really important then, because they were making all these egg creams and ice cream sodas, because they couldn't serve alcohol. People were not going to bars. So people were going to ice cream parlors more and going to the soda fountain more. And there was actually one of the things that my favorite thing that I learned when I was researching this book that I could not find a way to put into the book was that there was a whole, it was later, it was in the 30s and 40s, but there was a whole ring of chocolate syrup gangsters. There was a whole racketeering ring where they tried to get protection money and, regulate the pricing, and people were literally murdered over chocolate syrup. And the idea of chocolate syrup gangsters, I just love it. I really want to write a book about that one day, maybe. Put that
I
in.
would like to read that book.
Yeah, it'd be super fun, right? There's actually, when I started looking into it more, there's actually like a you can listen to it. It's like a radio show almost of the chocolate syrup gangsters people. And do you know the actor Richard Kind? He does a lot of things. He's in it. He's one of the voices, and it's really funny. Um, I have to try to find it again because I listened to it such a long time ago. But anyway, that was all that research was really fun and helped me really bring Solomon Stern to life and his profession to life. And then, of course, there was the matter of bringing Esther to life and her way of doing things, which is so different from Solomon Stern's way of doing things. And for that, I did a lot of research on holistic medicine, on herbal remedies. I was looking at the ingredients of all kinds of natural integrative medicine things to figure out what, if you didn't take regular medicine, if you were trying to use a purely herbal way of healing, what would you give someone for menopause? And there are lots of things, what would you give someone who might be trying to get pregnant? And then there was the folklore and the sort of magical piece, which I researched also. Just the idea of the evil eye and how that might factor into pregnancy. I was researching Jewish love magic and all kinds of things with Jewish magic. So all of that stuff was really fun and interesting. And I tried to incorporate that into Esther's world so that she became more lifelike. When I first kind of thought of this story, I knew that I wanted Augusta to make this sort of forbidden potion. And I knew that the first time she made it, it would be tragic. And that when she made it a second time, it would be the big ending of the book. And that the second time, it would be comical. It would just be something that would be poignant, yes, but that it would, I really wanted to try to make you laugh. So that whole final scene at the restaurant when they're under the table and, Nathaniel is there and he's about to drink it again and things come out. That was very much by design and I really wanted it to happen that way. Yeah. I I feel really happy that Augusta's story has resonated with so many people. And I think the idea that she takes a different path is special to me, that she's not a woman who just gets married and has children. That's not everything to her. I think some people might read the book in the beginning and think, she doesn't end up with Irving and she doesn't get married and she doesn't have children, and that is very sad. But to me, it's not sad. Yes, that was a missed opportunity, but I think it's important to have this character who doesn't do things in a typical way and still has a very full life and still has this amazing career, because not everybody gets married and not everybody has children. And I don't think we have to think that that's a sad thing. That can be what people choose and that can be what people want. And I think for me, when the book ends, yes, she's with Irving, so she finds this sort of romantic piece. But to me, that's not the most important thing at all. When Esther dies and Irving leaves her, she sort of gives up on life, right? She gives up on the magic of human connection. She has her career and that's wonderful, but she gives up on connection. And that was the thing that my father loved so much. He always wanted to be connecting with people, always. And so I'm very happy at the end of the book that it's not just that she has Irving, but like she makes a new friend. She has Shirley and she has Nathaniel, and it's never too late to make a new friend. And she has her community and she's going to the book club and she is practicing her profession in the way that she always wanted to, right? Mixing the way that her father did things with the way that Esther did things and marrying the two. And she kind of has it all at the end of the book. And that's what makes me so happy for her, not just the romance piece. So I think this book is really about being being seen in so many ways.
Mhm.
Irving sees Augusta. He's the one person when she's young who sees that her brain is her most beautiful attribute. He appreciates her ambition. And isn't that a gift, right? To have someone love you for who you really are, not just who they want you to be or who they think you are or who you might appear to be on the outside. And Esther, the idea of Esther really seeing her patients is very much a theme in this book too. It's not that Solomon Stern isn't a good pharmacist. He's a very good pharmacist, but if he's exhausted the list of options that are in his books and in his pamphlets, then he's done. But Esther looks beyond that and she sees people's pain and she sees their suffering, and that feels really important. And I think, the idea again, what I spoke of before of seeing people no matter what age they are, seeing that love is not just for young people, connection is not just for young people. That felt really important to write about also. So that is my spiel, as they say, and I am very happy to take questions and hear from you, and we can talk about whatever it is that you guys feel like talking.
I do want to say that I was feeling very bad about Augusta. And after you gave the spiel, I feel better because I kept thinking of, when Irving came to the pharmacy and he sees Jackie and thinks that's her daughter.
Right.
And I just love the way you wrapped it up there because I, Vanessa, feel better about it. Okay, who has questions? Go raise your hand or blurt it out. I mean, if you don't, I do.
Questions?
Andy, go ahead.
Um, it's really just a thank you and compliments
Thanks.
that I am from the congregation, but I now live in a 55 plus community in Florida. So you captured the love again so beautifully in the book, and particularly the constant search for love that you talk about from your father. Also, my sister Paula Burke, who's in the group, we were very blessed that we had two maternal uncles who were pharmacists.
Oh, that's
In probably about the time
Well,
that a little later, probably
yeah.
a little later
Well,
than
they practiced more in the 50s and late 40s.
yes.
yeah.
And they would talk about being soda jerks.
Mm-hmm.
And I also know that alcohol is such a big part of the past pharmaceutical practice. And for me, you captured the importance and the respect that was given to pharmacists. And we were raised thinking that pharmacists were doctors, pretty much.
Yeah.
That's where we got our initial care. And you captured so much of that, along with the special mysticism and fun in the book. I just think it was a masterful book that really spoke to me on those two levels, Florida and pharmacy. I was like, I couldn't believe it.
I'm glad.
Um,
Very
I
glad.
have put in the chat, I found the podcast, King of the A Cream.
Oh, yep. There you go.
Yeah. And The Matchmaker's Gift, you've all read The Love Elixir of Augusta Stern. And, just check out everything that Lynda has written. Was Esther based on anyone?
No, but there's a lot of my grandmother in her. My grandmother, the idea of food as medicine,
Mm.
um, was something that my grandmother really believed in. And when I was thinking about Esther before I had her, nailed down as a character, I thought of that phrase, Jewish penicillin for chicken soup. That's what we call chicken soup. And of course, that's perfect, right, for a pharmacy book, Jewish penicillin. But then I researched penicillin and it really wasn't available in the 20s. So I couldn't call it that back then. There wasn't, penicillin was really mass produced for World War II for all the people, all the soldiers in the field. But I stuck with the chicken soup. And my grandmother was like one of those people who, oh my God, she would say, eat a banana, you need the potassium. She would always, this is like now all we do is talk about protein, how we have to eat protein. But my grandmother would tell me, you must have protein for breakfast. It will fill you up. And she used to eat farmer's cheese on
Yeah.
toast
My
every morning.
grandma ate that too.
Yep, every morning for breakfast, that's what she had. She would make us chicken soup. She would make us roast chicken. She loved pistachio nuts. She always ate, she ate a lot and she was not a small woman, but she always ate real food. She didn't ever eat anything processed. She didn't eat potato chips or junk or whatever. To her, like fruit was, she would talk about fruit the way you would talk about a person. Like this melon is gorgeous, like it's like the way it was a very beautiful woman. That's how she talked about fruit. Um,
Was she born in America?
yes, she was. She was, but one of her brothers was not. So, and she and my mother, she spoke Yiddish. My mother didn't really speak it, but my mother understood it. So when they didn't want me to know what they were saying, she would speak Yiddish to my mother, and then my
Right.
mother would answer her back.
Same.
English. Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
Paula, and then Lynn.
I pictured Esther as like Ruth Buzzy at Laugh-In years ago when she dressed up all in black with the hairnet and her hair.
That's funny.
That's kind of in the kitchen in the dark, bustling around.
Yeah.
Your descriptions of her and her intensity and her love for what she was doing for the community was wonderful.
Thank you.
It was all your character development, I thought, was great, just great.
I really appreciate it.
All
Yeah.
fully developed characters. Nobody was lacking.
Lynn.
Okay. I think you just like touched us. There were pieces in this book, I think, that really touches people. Like my father was a pharmacist as well.
Oh,
And he grew up and he started as a soda jerk and then went to pharmacy school. So we had that connection. And then, of course, my mother lived in community and then assisted living. And she would tell me that the place was like Peyton Place there because stuff going on with the romance and everything. So I love that there were so many places where what you write about touches our lives. And I think that the way you explain everything and the work that you've put into it is pretty amazing. So I don't know how much more because you've synthesized everything in this book that we would normally have talked about.
oh
Yeah.
no,
And
I feel bad.
it was wonderful listening to. I'm sure Vanessa has other questions.
I do, of course
But
I
I love
do.
how you kind of wrapped it all up. So your spiel was very appreciated. And
Yeah.
my grandmother, God love her, used to say Campbellope. Campbellope was like sugar.
Oh,
you
yeah.
know? So, we all have
Yeah.
these connections with your
Yeah.
writing. So it was lovely.
Oh,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Where did the swimming connection come in?
It's funny. A lot of
I
people,
love water and
Yeah.
I love that. So
a lot of people will say like, "Are you a swimmer?" They want to know. My mother didn't know how to swim. My grandmother didn't know how to swim. The swimming actually came because I was thinking about their meeting.
oh.
And when you like go to the grocery store and you haven't showered and I put my hair up in a ponytail now, but like your hair is up in a ponytail and you're really not looking your best. And of course that's when you run into someone that you don't want to run into, right? Like, so imagine, I was kind of thinking like you run into your, old flame who you really want to look good for and you look like that. But then when I thought about it and I thought it's Florida and I thought the most awful thing to me, the very most awful possible thing would be to run into someone that you used to date if you were in your bathing suit and like just out of the pool. So it was wet, like not even dry where you kind of look like, you could be like on the cover of Sports Illustrated, whatever. It's wet and it's not even your good bathing suit. Like it's not a good bathing suit. And like how it would be the worst, the worst. And so I had to make her wet and I had to make her be in a bathing suit. And then I was like, I'm just gonna make her a swimmer. And I knew she was gonna be very active. And so that just all really fit. But it was really to give you the absolute ickiest feeling when he first goes to hug her and she's wet and she just is grossed out and doesn't want anything to do with him.
Wow.
So it
It's
was
like
really
behind the
that.
curtain.
That's behind.
It's so interesting.
Yeah.
Merle.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I loved your insight into what people do at that age. A few years ago, I went to a high school reunion and everyone was in their 70s. And there are two people who one was divorced, one was a widower. They got married.
So
I
nice.
mean, it happens. And then this year, my high school is giving a party for the people who are turning 80. And I swear, I think it's going to happen again. People will reconnect.
Yeah.
If there's a widower, and they'll get married because these people are so young at heart.
Yeah.
It's like the age, it's just a number, and you had so much insight into that. So it was really a fun book to read. Thank
Oh,
you.
I'm so glad. Thank
Yeah.
you.
All the auxiliary characters, Nathaniel, Bess and George, Jackie, it just added so much. And one you didn't let out until the very end how Nathaniel had stolen Irving's steam. And I knew that something was coming because, the whole thing of him marrying and of course the gangster's daughter, all of that. So I thought that reveal was just fabulous. Sue.
She's not,
Okay,
Oh,
all right.
Mute.
I unmuted.
Okay.
Okay, I did it. I too really found this book fascinating, and I think you did a great job with your character development. But I have a question, because I felt like Augusta slash Goldie, um, I felt like she was really kind of stubborn in her feelings about Irving, that underneath it all, she really still had a mad crush on him, but she wouldn't admit it no matter what.
Yeah.
And is that how you wanted her to appear?
Yeah. Yeah. I think those feelings they just don't die, right? They just don't
Right.
disappear. So I do feel, yes, she was very, very stubborn. It took her a really long time to warm up to him. But of course, you know, it's a story, so it was an extreme situation. He left without a word. He left, without any explanation for her at all. And so, of course, I think that makes her very reluctant to accept, his friendship, let alone anything more than that. It makes it really tough for her. But I think Irving, the key to writing Irving was the humor behind him, because he has such a good heart, but when you first meet him, all you know is that he just left her, right? So you could really not like him. And so I felt like I had to work really hard to make him lovable. And the way to do that was to use humor. And
Yeah. Um,
it was not easy because I was really afraid that that readers might not like him.
Yeah, he really was a lovable character.
He
so
was.
lovable.
Oh, yeah.
And
I mean,
and
I kind of fell in love with him.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
good.
Yeah. And the scene where Nathaniel has the green jello and
Yeah.
jello is just quintessential for that age group and everything.
Yeah.
Paula, it was so descriptive and you can just see that whole thing. And then Augusta giggling, giggling like a young girl about that. It was such a fun read. I listened to the book. I read it and listened to it. Do you have any input into who the readers are? I thought it was really a well done audiobook. Whoever she got Esther's accent good, and I loved listening to it as well.
So they kind of give me a couple voices to listen to. With the Matchmaker's Gift, I told them I really wanted two different people because it was really two separate stories.
Yeah.
It was Sarah's story, and then it was her granddaughter Abby's story. So I wanted two different people because I wanted a youthful voice and then an older voice. And so Gabra Zachman was the narrator for Sarah in that, and then she was the narrator for this book. So everyone liked her for this
Yeah.
book too.
Yeah, absolutely. We still have a few more minutes, but I just don't want to forget this. We would be remiss if we did not ask you, what are you working on now?
Right now, I am working on a book that has taken a long time to come together. And there are a lot of different reasons for that. Some of it was planning my daughter's wedding, and some of it was all kinds of things. But some of it was just sort of settling on the book that I wanted to write next. And it's a book, it's not done at all. It's not anywhere close to being done, but it's a book about a young woman who is adopted. It's set in New York City in Manhattan in 1965.
Mm,
And she, for as long as she can remember, she has had a recurring dream. And in the dream, there's a woman holding a book. And the woman says to her, "This is the book that saved your life." And then
Mm.
she wakes up from the dream. And she can't read the title or see what the book is, but it has a very unusual cover. And so she spends the summer before she goes to college wandering through all the bookstores and libraries and places in New York City looking for this book because she is convinced that if only she can find it, it's going to give her the answer to who her parents were and where she came from and who she really is. And so that is the story.
Oh.
But there's a lot more to it, but that's kind of the part that I can describe.
You can tell, right? Oh, it sounds really good. Is she going to be Jewish?
Yes, she's going to be.
Yay. Okay. I mean, we love your books, and that just sounds fascinating. And the other thing that I was going to say about the Love Elixir of Augusta Stern is that you also said it really before um, computers and, trying to find people online. So that heightens the serendipity of her running into Irving, or Irving running into her really in Florida. They couldn't have looked for each other, or know about each other or whatever.
Can't get rid of anybody these days.
No.
Anybody can find you.
Anyone can
You know,
find you.
It used to be you could just never see, you could just walk away. You can't do that anymore.
Nope. Nope. Marilyn, did you have a question?
Not a question, but I also thoroughly enjoyed the book, and
Thank you.
I just go along with what everybody else said, compliment you to the highest. But the funny thing about Irving running into her is that her niece Jackie knew from her mother about Irving, and so she looked for him and found him in that place, okay, and that she purposely sent her grandmother there. And I thought that was so special that her niece did that for her. And that to me was a great part of the book. I love that part.
Oh, I'm glad.
The Jackie character and their relationship was really hard. I mean, all the relationships, but we don't want Augusta to be alone. And even before she found Irving again, she had, her family and
Yeah.
so.
I thought that Jackie finding that place and directing her there was kind of a callback to Matchmaker.
You went
that-
out on what was the last sentence? You can put it.
that her niece finding that place and
Yeah.
sending her there was kind of a callback to Matchmaker.
Oh,
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought of that.
Very
Yeah, that's
Matchmaker
a nice
and
idea.
it's like an Easter egg. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a nice idea. I had not thought of that, so I'm glad you did.
Right. And now in your next talks, you can mention that. Okie doke. We're almost done here. Any other last questions? Lynda, we look forward to your next book. Can't
Thank you.
Thank you so very, very much.
Thank you
This
so much.
added a whole new
Thanks. I really
Yeah.
appreciate
It was
it.
layer.
really, it's like opening the curtain, and it just, it was really a fun night. All right, I'll see everybody. You'll get an email tomorrow. Our next book, and I don't know if you know her, Lynda, wait, I'll find it. It's, no,
Emily Matcher.
yes, In the Shadow of Greenbrier.
I don't know her, but I bet you're
So
gonna be fun.
Linda's here from the Jewish Book Council, and Emily will be with us, also from the Jewish Book Council. So,
Oh, that's
and I'll,
great.
I'll send this all out. Do you talk with any other Jewish authors?
Oh, a lot of them. Yeah, tons of them.
Yeah,
I-
Lynn.
Many of
I
them.
was thinking Alice Hoffman because she's always
Yeah.
got some mysticism in her books as well. So
Yeah.
that recalled.
I was lucky enough. I met her in the fall for the first time. She's one of my all-time favorites, and
Yeah.
she's
We love her.
yeah,
Yeah.
she's a real hero to me. But I met her this past fall, but I'm friendly. There's a bunch of us. Lisa Barr is
She's from here. Yeah, she's lovely.
she's really, really lovely. And Rochelle Weinstein, and I mean, there's just tons. Allison Richmond is my very close friend. So yeah, we all try to really support each other.
It's wonderful.
Good.
Yeah.
Yay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you, everybody.
Thank
Um,
you.
See you.
Bye-bye.
You'll hear from
Bye.
me.
So
Thank you.
nice.
Thank you, Linda.
Thanks.
Thank
bye.
you.
So much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Do
Thank you,
again.
Linda.